Welcome to another Southern Report. As you know, I'm trying to get on top of the buttons, trying to do it as fast as I can. Move this button, move that button, as I am broadcasting from the UK. And then we'll have the privilege to bring on my extra special guest at any moment. So I thank you very, very much for joining me today. And I'm going to bring on my guest now, who is again from outside the countries. And I am real privileged that David Baumblatt is actually joining me today, and we'll get straight into it. David, thank you so much for joining me from part of the world that you can now introduce and explain where you are. But I'm very privileged that you are joining me. So thank you very much, sir.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate it. Hello, everyone. My name is David Baumblatt, and I'm currently in Hong Kong, originally, obviously, from America.
No, it's brilliant. David, one of the things that I find when people talk to me about events that are going on from America is that they're very, very pleased to hear voices from outside. Some of them are, some of them aren't, because we give a different perspective. Now, could I ask you to explain your your website, how people can find you, what you do, because
Sure.
leadership is your number one word, and give a bit of a background in regard to FBI, etc.,
Sure.
and why you are where you are. Thank you, sir.
So my name is David Baumblatt, born and raised in New York, and I consider myself what's called a leadership veteran, leadership expert consultant. You could use other adjectives, but leadership is my number one, you could say, ethos in life. I graduated West Point. That's the United States Military Academy,
Mm.
which is considered the premier leadership institute of the world. Obviously, I served as a U.S. Army officer upon graduation, but I focus on leadership. Now, my situation is very controversial. I'm in a lot of trouble with the government, even though I believe they're corrupt and I'm innocent. But what is that point? If you're going to learn leadership and you're going to travel the path of leadership, it's going to be a rocky road. And I make this a point, and I write this in my book, but the point is a lot of us get leadership classes, whether it's a college, you're in a corporation, you're actually not learning leadership. They will tell you you're learning leadership. You're learning more management, self-help, which is good. That's all good. But make no doubt about it, part of leadership is change. And you've got to use common sense. A corporation does not necessarily want to spend all this money to teach you a leader. And they're like, okay, I'm a leader. I quit. I'm going to do my own thing. Many times corporations want to change you into an efficient worker bee, so you could do your job better. So I make this point before we go on, because if you really are a leader, notice Donald Trump. When Donald Trump ran, not very popular, controversial, but there's a saying in leadership is the invitation for judgment. Because as soon as you go out on leadership, I don't care who you are, people are not going to like you. And I'm going to make this point now because it reminds me, and that is there's two levels of leadership. There's the conventional and there's the spiritual. The conventional level leadership that we're all trying to be is that would be the CEO, that would be the general, or that would be the head of state, the president. If you look at a country and you say who's the top leader, it's usually the head of state, the prime minister, or the president. And then below them, it's usually about economics and security. So here are my generals and here are my CEOs. So in a conventional state, that's leadership. But what is even higher in leadership? Jesus Christ, the Prophet Muhammad, Lao Tzu, Buddha Rama. These leaders are eternal. And they're not, they are spiritual entities. They are divine deities. Now, I don't want to get too controversial when I say this, but the first thing that came to my mind when I talked about leadership and I talked about getting into trouble, look at a man like, or not a man, look at a deity like Jesus Christ. He had some controversial. So the point being is when you preach leadership, there are going to be people who disagree with you. There is going to be people who want to persecute you. So the point being is one of the things that I've known in leadership is I don't like to use the word troublemaker, but you got to be a little rebellious, because the flip side is, what happens if people always follow the rules, follow the rules, follow the rules? And but we've always heard that some types of organizations or countries, they go down the path of evil. And we always say, why didn't people stand up? Because they follow the rules. So you need to have a little bit. And that's also the problem. And I'll go into the FBI, the US military, they're a bunch of yes men. And I will go into it, but really today's military, how they get promoted, it's really about just saying yes sir, yes sir, yes sir. So you have people that are followers, and you see our system in America crumbling. So that's kind of the big, I know I put a big pie in the sky, but I would say is leadership. Lesson number one is, don't fool yourself. It's not like the Hollywood movies where the leader always wins and does the right thing. And then leadership has a lot of friction. And there's going to be a lot of people that point their finger at you and say you're wrong and this, and you got to fight. And sometimes morality is more important than legality. And so you're going at that. And that's been me my whole life. But if somebody probably said, like, if you found one of my old West Point classmates or buddies, and they said, and you ask them, give me a character trait of David, they'd probably say he's a little bit of a rule breaker. He's a little bit, and it's part of leadership. You've got to have that.
In other words, they might say to you, you're someone who always pushes it. You'll push,
yeah.
you'll push it a bit, right?
I do. But what's interesting is I actually, in my case, and we'll go into it, I actually never wanted to do this, because part of leadership, there's a phrase, it's called lead, follow, or get out of the way. Lead, we've always heard that. Picture one of your coworkers in a corporation. All he does is complain. I hate my job. I hate my job. I hate my job. You're like, listen, why don't you change it? Why don't you get promoted? You become the CEO, sort of like Donald Trump. Like, you become the CEO and change the company, number one. Number two, just shut your mouth, follow. Nobody wants to listen to a complainer. Or three, quit. Just quit your job and go. So don't fool yourself. I left America in 2010 because that was the leadership in my mind. Lead, follow, or get out of the way. And in 2005, I was already predicting the collapse and civil war of America, all the way back in 2005. And then I thought, well, I'm no Donald Trump. And even back then, you got to remember, back then it was like, more than 20 years ago or so. Nobody believed me. They were like, you're crazy. So I'm not really much into arguing as much as I'm not going to follow. I mean, I use the word cuck, and I mean it. I believe today's American man is an absolute cuck. You cannot have a strong country with weak men. So I'm like, I'm not going to follow. So I said, I'm going to get out of the way. Now, I chose China for many reasons, and I'm not advocating going to China, but I was like, leave. I've got a buddy, he went to, New Zealand. So I'm just saying, when the ship is sinking, try to fix the ship, try to just, follow, I guess, or get out of the way, just get out. So that's why I left America in 2010. And I stand firm. The system in America, collapse, civil war, revolution, whatever adjective you want to do, it's not going to last. It's going to break down.
What were you seeing in 2005? Let's try and go back to that bit of history, because 9/11 had happened in 2001. There was then, within a number of months, it was carpet bombing Afghanistan. Then by 2003, I think it was the Iraq war, really well and truly built up to that. So that's a context. Then, of course, by 2005, it was well into Iraq, etc., etc. What did you see? What did you see happening, I suppose? Right. So just quickly, it was George Bush Jr. that was in. He had he'd taken over from Bill Clinton. I say that because I'm deliberately going to say this is the uni party that we are. I believe that we are looking at. We have the same over here. Do not think that we don't have that. We do. It's just taking. I'll just be quiet. What I'm saying is funny when you said this. When we voted to Brexit, that spurred on people to vote for Donald Trump. That did spur it on. That did spur Bannon on. So there has been this cross references of people waking up. I do apologize. What did you see in 2005?
Sure. So 2005, it just started, so it wasn't 100% 2000, but 2005 started clicking. Here's what, and also, by the way, before I went into the FBI in 2004 to 2007. I was a special agent, National Security Branch, Foreign Counterintelligence. Something, though, interesting that relates. Before I was in the FBI, I was in the U.S. Army. When we went to war in Iraq, I remember this. In order to get to West Point, you have to get a nomination, like a congressman or senate has to nominate you. My congressman, which he might be deceased now, it's a long time ago, his name was Congressman Sherwood Buller from New York. He was the congressman who gave me my nomination to West Point. So I remember, now I'm in the military. I was either a first lieutenant or a captain. I think it was a captain. Anyway, besides Afghanistan, we're going to Iraq, which I was like, what's Iraq have to do with, 9/11? We could go into it. But anyway, I decided to write my congressman, right? I mean, this is my congressman, and people know my story now. These politicians are worthless. But I remember writing them back then. I said, listen, Congressman, hi, my name's David Baumblatt. You gave me my nomination at West Point, because I had to do an interview. I mean, I think he might remember me. I don't know. I mean, not many, every year you nominate someone at West Point, so whatever. But I said, I've got an issue with Iraq. I'm in the military. If they order me to go to Iraq, I got to follow my orders. But is this, and I remember this specific wording, does this war have to do with national defense or national interests? And when I say national interest, it started opening my mind to this military-industrial complex. Like, what are we doing? So before I went into the FBI, I was still wondering what's going on here with this apparatus. So this is something that I might be different than other people. It's part of leadership. And that is, usually people have, sometimes you have a, I'm not going to say like a handicap, like you have a weakness and it could equal a strength. So I actually grew up, I'm very dyslexic. In fact, I had to do reading classes. How I did 4 master's degrees, we'll go into it. But I'm very dyslexic.
Brilliant. Well done you. Well done
yeah,
you.
Exactly. And I can explain how I did it, because it goes the other. But when I was in the intelligence community, I had an evaluation. I never, as much as I say the government sucks, and it's all, every now and then you get some government people, you're like, these guys are pretty good. Anyway, I had to do a psychological evaluation, not because I was doing anything bad. It was just part of it. They wanted to do so to get you ready for the operations. They just wanted to make it. So I did an evaluation from a psychologist. He really liked me, because he told me later, he did, like, at America, we have a big thing, this group, they do like Civil War reenactments, like these old guys, they do. He loves West Point. So he dressed, they dress up in these, Confederates, they dress up in the Union soldier, and I've heard about it, but they go on the battlefield and they do these things, and he's into it. So he loves West Point. So he was really interested in me. And he told me, he goes, well, here are the results. He goes, first, you can't read. And I never told anyone that. Even in the Bureau, I had special reading classes growing up. In fact, I was going to fail school, like put back in public school. I never told anyone that, because you don't want to say it. He immediately, I was surprised. I was like, he goes, you're dyslexic. You can't read. He goes, how'd you get through West Point? And there's a way I did it. And he goes, you're off the charts with conceptualization. How to conceptualize. He goes, you're off the charts. And what I'm thinking is, it could have been, and I'll do another video on how I got through universities, because you can't read. And the point being is when I enter environments, I don't care whether it's the FBI, a business, or a country, I conceptualize very quickly. And how do I conceptualize? It's with the people. And you've heard it, like if you enter a corporation, we'll say, and the CEO says, this is the best corporation ever, and this is the best. Hey, show me the people. If it's the people are good, everything. Meaning, it's all about the people, and that's part of leadership. It's all about the people. If you have honorable people, you'll have an honorable company. I mean, this is not rocket science, but when you conceptualize, you focus on the people and you try to synthesize. Now we'll go back to America. the American man has changed. I mean, I hope this is not a surprise to anyone, but 50 years ago, 100 years ago, whether it's sperm counts, testosterone, we're not the same American men. It is what it is, people. And these American men have infiltrated everywhere in society, meaning West Point, when they recruit, FBI, CIA, when they recruit out of the same hometowns in America. So if the men change, they change. Also, we've changed demographic by having foreigners. We're having more foreigners. Our you could say our original European population. Now we have, so the people have changed in America in 50 years. That changes it. So I would say one of the things that really clicked me when I went into the FBI is this. I think, which I've totally changed my mind, and I was at one time, I wanted to make a career in the government, because even though I'm a staunch capitalist, I still felt capitalism, it's all about the money, money, money. And I've always had, if you're going to be a leader, you have to have principles. And money's good. And I'm a pro-capitalist. I'm pro-capitalist. But it's the same reason I went to West Point, duty, honor, country. And I thought, which I'm wrong, that people who work in the government, it's not about the money, it's duty, honor, country, it's doing the right things. But people who work in the private sector are greedy, greedy, greedy. No, because we've also changed. 100 years ago, the private sector and the government were more separated. They are so intertwined now that now the government and the private sector are so there. So here's an example. When I was in the FBI, we're basically, we work for the government. It's the same thing like the military. The military works for the military industrial complex. So the government's entwined. So here's just an example. And I realized that the government is not really out to do the right thing. They work for the politicians who work for the corporations, and it's just an extension. When I was in the FBI, I worked foreign counterintelligence, and I would say within 1 year in the FBI, 1 year, and we're including the academy, like the FBI Academy, 1 year. And you got to go back to when I joined the FBI. At that time, terrorism, Islamic radical terrorism was the #1 threat. That was it. That's where the money was going, the FBI, everything. Everything else was secondary, criminal, stuff like that. Within 1 year in the FBI, I realized that at least from a national security standpoint, the threat from China was bigger than the threat from radical Islamic terrorism. And I can talk about China because now I've even changed my mind about China after I'm living there. But the point is China is a political, economic, military, and I knew it because back then it was like 2004, but I knew it. They are growing into a superpower. Terrorism, and I write this in my book, people, the war on terror is like the war on crime. When are we going to get rid of criminals? Never. We're always going to have criminals. Now, it can ebb and flow. There could be high crime, low crime. You have to look at it from economics, from social, from legality, from immigration, diversity, all these things. You're always going to have crime, people. It is what it is. And that's why you always will need policemen. Even though I'm into defunding the police by 50%, you still need police. Guess what, people? Terrorism is not something new. It's been around for thousands and thousands of years. You're always going to have terrorism, and you're always going to need to have, special operations intelligence folks to do it. It also ebbs and flows. But look at 9/11. It wasn't able to literally destroy us. Another superpower like China, that's different. So at that time, I voiced my opinion to higher management. I said, our priorities are wrong. China's #1, terrorism is #2. They totally blew me off. They're like, whatever. Now, why? Why did they do that? It's the same thing. I'll do examples, is you follow the money, which again, I thought in the government, it's not about the money. It's doing the right thing. In the corporations, it is about the money, but we're one and the same. It's all. So if you go back then, we had 2 kinetic wars. It's called Afghanistan and Iraq. That's the terrorism, the war on terror. For China, we had what's called a Cold War espionage war. Now, if you compare the amount of money we were spending, because when there's a war, actually 2 wars, it's not just the war, it's the supply chains, the Halliburton, remember Dick Cheney? I mean, You think espionage is expensive? You start doing wars. So, I mean, I would say the amount of
You mean,
budgetary,
you mean Dick Cheney, who had the Patriot
yeah.
Act in place, ready to bring in after 9/11. Oh,
Oh
yes,
yeah,
I did say that.
absolutely. I mean, meaning where was the money train going that time?
Mm,
The wars. I mean, that's where
mm,
you make money. We're talking the military-industrial complex.
mm,
That's a China. Maybe 5%, like difference between five. I mean, no one was really making money off the China thing. That was more. But when you start doing major wars like Afghanistan, Iraq, the civilian contractors, defense contractors budget, and so and that's how it works.
What about
And this
then? Sorry, and then if you go back then to Eisenhower's conversation
He's
before
100%
he
right.
stepped down, yeah, and
He's
look at
100%.
what, yeah, and the effect on American society through the 60s in regard to the Vietnam War and beyond. Yeah,
It's really, and that's why I said I don't believe we have a country anymore. We have a corporation. And
right.
it's not like that, like in China. And I'm not saying China is the good model, but I
Mm,
am saying in the West, it's corporatized. We have a corporate, it's all about the money. It's all about the money. Here's another example. When I left the FBI in 2007, I did way too much college. Oh, that's by the way, to all the young men out there, college is overrated. Get an education. That not necessarily means you have to go to college. If you want to do it, do it. If not, get an education. But whatever. I did too much college. I decided to go to Harvard. So I went to Harvard. I went to what's called the Harvard Kennedy School of Government.
right.
Now, in America, the number one alumni for politicians, it doesn't matter, federal level, state level, is the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. It doesn't matter if it's Republican or Democrats. That's the machine. So people go there to get politics, get the alumni, and then run for office. Doesn't matter if it's
Right.
a Republican or Democrat. So the point that I'm making is they know a lot about politics. They know the
Mm,
game. So I was in a class because I was actually thinking about running for Congress at this time. And the professor was asking a question. So this is a graduate class. You know, it's a graduate class or whatever.
mm,
I don't know. People are everywhere from maybe 25 years old to 40 years old, you know, whatever like that. And he goes, what does it take to be a politician in America? What does it take? And people were thinking like, well, you got to be tall, you got to be good at public speaking,
right.
you got to be
Right.
smart. Like, you know, we're thinking, well, what does it
Mm,
take to be a politician? He looked at us and he's like, number one, how much money can you raise? How much money? And I kind of was shocked when he said that. And I realized that it's all about the money. Now, I'm sure if you were running for like, I don't know, like you're in a very small hometown, you know, like, and you're not running at the federal level, you're not running at the state level, because trust me, the corporations don't care about you. You're meaningless. You know, the
mm,
corporations want to control the congressman senators. But anyway, most people don't have $1 million or so. I mean, if you're going to run to be at the federal level, a congressman or senator, you better make some money. Well, most people don't have money. So who do you get? You get your donors. Well, these donors don't give you money with no strings attached. They give you
yep.
money and they expect you to perform. So the point being is this. I think back to the Revolutionary War. This is General George Washington. And at that time, they looked at the King of England as this tyrannical
Mm,
being.
mm,
And they said, we have to form a new government where this thing doesn't happen anymore. And they created the checks and balances, you know, a judicial, executive, legislative branch. And it was phenomenal. I think they were ahead of their time. However, at that time, I don't think our founding fathers, because they viewed the most powerful tyrannical entity is the King of England. You could say government, like government. They said, we have to protect ourselves from a tyrannical government.
mm,
But
mm,
at that time, I don't think they predicted that there's something more powerful than the government. It's the banks, the corporations. So the point is, it doesn't matter what checks and balances you have in your government when everybody's working for the same corporate master. It doesn't work. Democracy doesn't work. And I think Americans are going to realize that sooner or later. And that's why you're hearing terms like the uni party that, you know, you think the Democrat, but at the end of the day, if the Democrats and the Republicans are both working for the same donors,
mm,
then we have what's called a uni party.
mm,
And what really, and you know, I don't want to go. too much on a tangent, but this FBI investigation on me, I think what people should be shocked about is this, because many people, if you say, listen, the FBI and the CIA are corrupt and this and that, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are like, David, you're not telling me anything new. I've known about that for 50 years. You know what I'm saying? Meaning the intelligence world has always been kind of, there's a bit of that tarnishment, that black, that cloak and dagger. However, not West Point. That's not West Point. West Point is about duty, honor, country, and these are your military officers. So the investigation into me by the FBI, they recruited West Point graduates. These are people that I know, my classmates, this and that. They paid them money to spy on me. That I'm surprised the American public is not like, what? Because here's it very simple. The most powerful government agency, pound for pound, is the FBI. I don't think people realize how powerful it is. It's not the CIA, it's the FBI. However, what's the most powerful agency altogether? It's the military. I mean, the military as a whole, I mean, it's a wrecking force. So the point being is there's about, I think 13% of the personnel in the military are the officers. That's the officer corps. 13, I mean, that's the leadership. Out of that officer corps, you get people coming in what's called through ROTC. You get people through what's called OCS, Officer Candidate School, and then very small, it's like maybe 1% or something, come from what's called the academies, West Point. West Point is the creme de la creme of military leadership. It takes taxpayers about $500,000 US to graduate one cadet 4 years from West Point. You send them to West Point because you're expecting them to have leadership, honor, this and that. When you cannot even trust now the military, which I think is now becoming commonplace, the military industrial complex, these generals are corrupt. It's over, people. This thing's going down. So when I go back to your original question, that was kind of the formulation. And we go more into the FBI, where I realized that we're not really working for the people here. I realize that we're not working. And so that's something. And it's such a shame, because I say, you could trust me, you go to my Twitter, I say very bad, profound profanity names against the military, against the law enforcement. But in my heart, I truly believe a law enforcement policeman is the hero of the community. They lost it. They have lost that title, and they need to re-earn it. The military, I come from military, but I truly believe a soldier, a military officer, he is the defender of freedom. He's the defender of the people. Well, they lost that too. I now view law enforcement as they are the bullies of the government, and I view the military as they're really mercenaries. They're government. They don't serve the people anymore. They serve the government. They go off the war and they make money. And so it's weird, because I'm in I'm in a catch, what is it, catch 9/11 or something like that, where
catch 22. Catch 22.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no.
I got to get more of the English stuff. Catch 22. So the point being is I grew up where you respect military veterans. And so part of me, I'm actually inside very angry that here I am, a military veteran. My country government has destroyed my life. I have government corruption I want to report. I expect my fellow American citizens to support me. I expect it 100%. And they're not. Some do, some don't. But at the same time, I don't think the military deserves any respect anymore. I just don't. We're not serving the people. So if I met an American citizen that says, David, go screw yourself. I don't respect you military veterans. You serve the government. You're mercenary. You don't serve the people. I can't argue with them anymore. So do you see where the system's going? It's not going good. It's going down and down and down.
I hear you. Sorry.
Or what I say is, listen, I graduated West Point. That is duty, honor, country. I have something to say. You better believe me. But at the same time, they could say, what are you talking about, David? You just said West Point's it's dishonorable. The people are doing it. And West Point's a dishonorable place. And I'd say, I can't argue with you. So this is this catch-22. But either way, that's not good for the system. The system is not. You cannot have a system, and it's happening more and more. Our system is crumbling. Even to everyone listening, the thought that I'm here and my life has been destroyed, and I reported this to every single congressman and senator, and everyone's ignored me. Do you think they're just going to ignore me? They're going to ignore you too. But meaning this never should have happened. Meaning, I truly believe if this was 50 years ago, a congressman or senator, they'd say, "What's going on? We're going," or even the FBI. These guys are scumbags, and we'll talk about them. But literally, this is all recorded and all documented. This was in January of 2020, right when the COVID happened. I met with 2 FBI managers out of what's called the U.S. Embassy in Beijing. We have FBI scattered throughout the globe. They're called what's called legal attaches, legats. And I had a meeting with them, and it was face to face. I actually knew one of them. The other guy I never met before. And I said, "Listen, I am under investigation by the FBI. I know it. It's so obvious. We could explain it. I've done so many interviews. If anyone, go to my Rumble channel. There's over 60 videos, and I go into it. But I said, but again, what I'm about to say here is about leadership. That's the key. This is about leadership. These are the FBI, which stands for fidelity, bravery, integrity. It's a joke. It's an absolute. That's why I left the FBI. It's a joke of an organization because the people are a joke. That's really it. Leadership 101. If you have dishonorable, incompetent people, that's it. So anyway, I said, I'm under investigation. They looked at me and they said, "David, we don't know what you're talking about." And I said, "That's fine. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt." And I said, "Well, FBI headquarters knows. Send a cable to FBI headquarters. You tell them I told them stop doing the investigation, face me man to man, and level the allegations." This is something that and this is the problem. Probably one of the biggest lucky things I've ever had in my life was a father. And I'm talking a real father. A lot of these men, they don't have fathers, meaning the leadership lessons that I'm saying, you don't need to go to West Point. All you have to do is have a good father. If you have a good father, they'll teach this up. So I was like, listen, FBI, you little small penis little boys, stop spying on me behind my back like a bunch of girls. Like think about it, you're in high school. And some person's talking behind your back, ruining your reputation. You confront them, stop doing it. They don't say anything, but they keep doing it. So I went to the people. I said, send a cable back to headquarters. They did. This is all recorded. All the congressmen and senators have this. It's like a repeating record now. It's all recorded. They sent it back to headquarters. They came back to me, and FBI headquarters doesn't confirm, doesn't deny, nothing. And then they continue to spy. That right then and there should show you why I should not be speaking here. It should have stopped at that point. That would have been a point that if you had real men, and I actually have more positive feelings on the old J. Edgar Hoover. Yes, there was corruption. He was tyrannical. We'll go into it. He did. But I'm telling you, those old school G-men, those old school American men, this would not happen. They would have said, arrange it, because here's another reason. I'm gonna give you an example. When you find high testosterone men, they care about reputation. They care about their legacy. They care about their family name. They care about tradition. It means something to them. When you get these like little weak men, they don't care. They don't care about their, it's like America's a joke. They don't care.
Right.
But at that time, the FBI was like, listen, we don't want David to go public and ruin our name. That's old school FBI, because we need to protect this reputation. Get with David immediately, figure out what's going on, and let's get this problem solved now at this level. But I'm telling you, right now, do you know what's happening to the FBI right now? Guys in the FBI headquarters that are probably watching this, they don't care. Because like I said, you got to look at today's American man. And that's kind of what an FBI CIA agent is now, meaning we're not going to planet Mars for these guys, and planet Venus is for the other. They're from the same towns in America, and you're seeing it so obvious. When I went into the FBI, and here's another problem. When I went into the FBI, it was post 9/11. And so I joined the FBI during the largest hiring phase in the history of the FBI. Meaning there's times where people would apply to the FBI. There's like a hiring freeze. And the guy would be like, listen, I want to get into the FBI. hiring freeze. We're not hiring anyone. They're like, well, when are you going to start hiring? Come back in 3 years. I mean, that's how it was. I mean, they had so few slots, so the quality was high. When I went in, because it was 9/11, 9/11, and the bureau was able to expand, and they recruited a ton. And personally, some of their resumes and credentials, not impressive. I'm telling you, not impressive. But remember, I joined in 2004. It's 2024 now, 20 years. My classmates, they're the management now. Meaning I've seen them. These are the people now, senior management. I was not impressed with them. And I'm going to give you an example. And sometimes as leadership, you got to be able to tell the truth, but you don't really have an intent to do harm. It's kind of like using profanity sometimes, or racial slurs, where people use racial slurs amongst themselves. If you see a black guy and a black guy and they both say nigger, nigger, they're with themselves. They're saying it. It's the intent. So I'm saying this to my roommate. He's a great guy. I like him. But I'm telling you, his resume was not high. And so my point is this. We like to say that FBI management is evil. You've heard this. This is Leadership 101. We always like to say the management is evil, but the field agents, they're good guys. You hear this a lot, whether it's the CIA or even the military, like management is corrupt, but the people on the ground are good. It's 100% wrong. It's a little different, but I'll explain. And I'm going to use my roommate. Obviously, I'm not going to say his name. And what I'm going to describe my roommate is 90% of the situation. There are these FBI agents, and it's the same way with like law enforcement. We could do it. It's in all these other organizations where they are truly nice guys. If they were your next door neighbor, you'd have a barbecue with them, and you'd say they are nice guys. And they don't have this corruption. They're not evil. They're really good guys, but they're weak. They're weak. My roommate, great guy, but he's a weak. And guess what weak men don't want to do? They are not going to jeopardize their paycheck and their pension. They're just not going to do it. I'm telling you 100%, they're not. I'm going to say 90% of them, and I like to use the word reluctantly, because they don't want to do corruption. They don't want to destroy your life, but they will reluctantly follow the order. I'm telling you, I know this. I've talked to so many people because, and also by the way, I don't want to defend them so much, but it is easier said than done. You have kids, you have a mortgage. A lot of people just say, "Come on, why don't they quit?" Trust me, I've done this. It's tough. It's a big stress, but there's a difference between quitting your job at McDonald's, where it's a private company, you don't affect us, versus you're an FBI agent. You swore an oath. You're making, you're on government dime, meaning, come on, man. It's like a military officer. Like, you're not normal, meaning you're not a normal private person. You swore an oath. We have higher standards for you. You should have, courage. Well, I mean, why? But but I'm telling you, 90% of them, they're not corrupt, but they're weak. My roommate is a great example. He is an awesome guy. If he was your next door neighbor, you love the guy. But if he was given the order to arrest your daughter, your son, for whatever, he's going to do it. He's going to do it because he doesn't want to get in trouble. He's got a paycheck. He's got a pension. And we cannot lose focus of that, because I hear this all the time that, we'll say Director Ray, which I think he's corrupt. Director Ray is corrupt, but the agents are good. No, I'm not going to say the agents are evil, but I'm going to say the agents are weak. These are weak men, and they are not going to sacrifice their paycheck and their pension. So get ready, people. When the order is given, they're going to execute. They will arrest you, and it is what it is. And how do you defeat that? Like I said, I think the bigger question in America, and I kind of hone in on my book and I talk about it, but if the American man, this ethos, is weak, well, that weakness is going to be kind of everywhere in society. And so, I don't know. I mean, that's, like I said, I'm personally thinking we're going to go to collapse in civil war. I think remember that phrase, like, strong men make good times,
yes.
weak men?
Absolutely.
I think it's
Absolutely.
just going to get this
That's
cycle.
a,
That's my
yeah,
prediction.
it's a very profound statement. And David,
Yeah,
let's go, if we go back into sort of FBI history, but let's just start when you're saying about the American man. You're absolutely right. You know, I'm someone that grew up on John Wayne cowboy films directed by Ford and all the rest. Love it. Someone, you know, I love that. I love the guy. And we think about that. We think about his the way he sometimes in an interview would conduct himself and say some very profound things, believe it or not, and people would actually listen. But he represented Americana 101. And then you're looking at the beautiful, you know, the scenes in Nevada, Arizona, and all the rest, and other parts of America. There we are showing this backdrop. Now, I'm not pushing smoking, but we remember, I think, you know, the Marlboro cowboys, the
yeah.
Marlboro pictures. A dear friend of mine's stepdad was one of those. So if she watches this, I'm just giving her a shout out. But let's go back to the FBI. There's
Sure.
always been a question in regard to its founding. I mean, I understand
Yeah.
a few years ago, I think an article was written, which I've read, which I'm trying to write about, which I'm part as research. So the FBI has got 33,000 people that work for it. They are then federalized. So when Teddy Roosevelt bring about pre-FBI, because it wasn't named that straight away, there was concerned about the fact that it had no constitutional framework. It was not under the Americans. There was
Yeah.
concern within Congress that where is the control of this? Where is control of the FBI? So you then have got, of course, it's federalized. So for people that don't understand politically how America works, FBI, its remit is across the whole of America, right? It hasn't got, yes, it will go to various law enforcers in certain states, but it doesn't have to. You know, it's a certain arrogance in one sense, but it conducts itself that before anyone else. Yes, I have met them. So that's the thing. As a dear friend of mine was
I,
doorstep by him. But what I was going to say is
I
this.
Go ahead.
Then you've got Truman when the CIA came about under
Yep.
Truman,
And
and
I'll explain
Truman's
that.
turning around. Yeah, Truman's turning around and saying, "Well, I'm concerned now that we've actually created our own version of the Gestapo." So, and words to that effect. So this is put in power, and then let's hold this context. So, in regard to J6, I know we're jumping slightly, but 1,271 prisoners, people at this count, have been arrested, um, etc. So the FBI doing that. You've got Christopher Wray, who has a legal background, right? He's a lawyer, I believe,
Yeah,
worked for a top
he's a lawyer. He's a globalist corporate lawyer.
corporate. Absolutely. So you've
So
got
I look at
all
him.
of, yeah, you've got all of this. And then suddenly you've got an organization that spent many years fighting communism. And just as an aside, in regard to J. Edgar Hoover, a dear friend of mine explained this to me, which is fascinating. So Edgar Hoover was a Mason. So the Masons within America, within Washington, etc., there was a fight between the Masons and the FBI about who was going to have his belongings when he died, and the Masons won. And his office is set up in, I'll find out, I'll have to find out the body and let you know, in some Masonic lodge or whatever, or Rosicrucians or whatever.
Yeah.
But is in there in Washington. It's set up. And then what would happen is that people from the FBI would go in and visit at various points because they wanted to absorb the atmosphere so they could then become, you know, J. Edgar Hoover 2 or whatever. Right. I'll be quiet. But what I'm saying is to put it in this historical context. I want to ask, here's a question. When you came in and you were talking about all the concern was about, you know, Islamic terrorism, etc., etc. The manuals that the FBI were reading then would have been written by a very, very brave American patriot who's no longer with us, which is Phil Haney, I believe. He had a huge input into that warning about what was going on.
Yeah.
So,
So and I'll do some snippets here because you reminded me some stuff. So
mm,
one thing I should point about, because again, the FBI doesn't recruit on leadership. And so I'm going to get with J. Edgar Hoover on this thing.
Yeah.
They recruit on skill. So really what recruits on leadership? Military and the business world.
Right.
In fact, the Harvard Business School is considered, they call it the West Point of capitalism. So West Point, military leadership.
Yeah.
So the point is, I was very different than my FBI classmates because I came from such a strong leadership background where they may be different. They might have said, looks good to me, where I was like, I think I had higher standards and I'm like, oh my God, this is horrible. So it's just different. But I wanted to point that out because I'm actually positive about J. Edgar Hoover. But we could talk about him. He did illegal stuff, and I know I'm not defending him also, but let's just look at this from a leadership standpoint. The average age of a brand new special agent in the FBI, even though I heard it's getting younger now, which is not good. There's a reason why they want FBI agents older than CIA agents. There's many reasons where CIA new guys could be like about 25, FBI, because the FBI, they want it to be your second job. So my first job, I was in the military. I was a military officer. That was my first job, and that's how they want it. But I want to use this as an example for leadership when people look at J. Edgar Hoover. When I entered the FBI, like a lot of people, we're around 30 years old. And of course, we're at the bottom of the pole. We're a special agent. The FBI now is about 30,000 people. There's about 10,000. Now it's grown. I think it's about the 12,000 now. Special agents. And then you have everything. Like you have, secretaries, admin, analysts. But, it's about 10,000 plus special agents. So you're at the bottom of the pole, the bottom of the ladder at 30 years old. When J. Edgar Hoover took charge of the FBI, he was 30 years old. Yeah. Now, the FBI wasn't as big as it is now, but it would be weird if someone looked at me and says, David, you're 30, welcome to the FBI, you're in charge. Meaning, that was J. Edgar Hoover. I mean, talk about leadership, where he wasn't a special agent. He was literally, J. Edgar Hoover, you are now the director of the Bureau, you're 30 years old, take charge. So, it was a different world back then, the G-Man, and I miss it. I wish we had it. It's not. So one of the things, though, that I saw that hopefully I'm not missing the statement that you had, but one of the things, though, that the FBI has to be much more, I don't know the word, using white gloves, where the CIA gets away with it. And that was when I was in the FBI, we spied on foreign nationals, which is what the CIA does all the time. They focus on foreign nationals. The FBI, we do foreign nationals and we do American citizens. So as much as I hate these scumbags in the FBI, and I would like to do physical violence to these guys, literally, I would physically hurt them. I actually don't have any complaints with how the FBI is working with foreign nationals. What we're really focusing on is U.S. citizens. Yeah. That's really the key, what we're looking at, because I'm a nationalist. I didn't fight for my country and come home and I want to be treated like I'm in East Germany Stasi. I'm a citizen. I don't do this to me. But so when I spied on foreign nationals, I'm fine. I think the FBI is doing fine. Sometimes they have more power. But the problem is we got to go to this law. It's the 1978 FISA Act, Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. And I saw that and I reported this. When I went into the FBI, remember, this is 2004 to 2007, the war on terror. If you're an American citizen, if you're a Muslim, oh, you're done. You're being spied upon. And anybody knows me. I'm not the champion of Islam. It's not like I'm a bleeding heart and say, oh, but the point is, yesterday it was Muslims. Today it's Christians. They're doing it. They're spying on the Christians.
Yes, they are. They're very...
Leadership, you focus on the principle. And the principle is an American citizen. Notice I didn't say foreign national. I'm just focused on an American citizen who's doing no illegal activity. You don't spy on them. If you want to spy on them, there's something called the Fourth Amendment. You go through the Fourth Amendment, which is what we do in the criminal side. So, if you're a U.S. citizen, but I think you're a bank robber, yes, I have to go through the Fourth Amendment. I need probable cause. I need something. They don't do that. And I said, and I warned it. I wrote this. I said, this is dangerous. This is dangerous. But, whatever. I was going to quit. I didn't want to argue too much with them. But we're doing the same thing. And meaning the FBI, you're a U.S. citizen. You're not doing anything illegal. They can spy on you. Why? They say you're a terrorist. They say you're a spy. And you'd be amazed. They don't need much evidence. Like me. It sounds like flamboyant that I'm saying I'm a national security threat. but on paper, I am. I am under a national security investigation by the FBI because they think I'm a threat. And the joke is, it's a joke, but go back to the January 6th. You got some like middle-aged white woman who pays her taxes and she trespassed in the Capitol and she's now a terrorist and they look at her as a national security threat. The same reason you look at that and say this is the most ridiculous thing. Welcome to the new world of the FBI with me. It's ridiculous. I would, without a doubt though, people ask me how I changed the FBI. One of the things I would do day one, 50% CIA, FBI, 50% shit can. Fired immediately. It's too much. They're causing more problems than good. They're taking away our tax money. They like to pump up the threats to keep the money. I'm telling you, this is also something I learned when you asked me how did I learn this in 2005. I kept thinking that the government is different than the corporations back then. I thought they're not. What do corporations want to do? They want to grow, expand, become a monopoly. We do that. Everyone, MBA 101. I mean, that's what you do. The government does the same thing. They continue to expand. The FBI is building a brand new headquarters that's bigger than the Pentagon. Or to the American public, we just got done with Afghanistan. It was a complete and utter failure from morality, from competence. Notice no West Point general has ever admitted blame, never apologized. But what do they want? They want more money. I mean, it's the most ridiculous thing. The government is so inept, so incompetent, so immoral. But guess what they do every year? More money. The only good thing, hopefully, in the private sector, not with these corporations because they're connected with the government, is if you're in the private sector, you do well, you expand. If you don't do well, you go bankrupt. The government never does. They'll go. Because there's no performance metrics. So now you've got this agency called the FBI and the CIA. They're incompetent. They're immoral. Normally in the private sector, they would go bankrupt and goodbye. Not this. They want more of your money. It's like the military. It's like, hi, we just finished Afghanistan. What did you think? It was horrible. You people should be fired. Don't worry about it. Give us more of your money. We want to expand.
David, you're absolutely right. They're not going to go bankrupt. That's partly because they've got the printing presses and the Federal Reserve, and all they have to do is press the button. I do apologize to interrupt because we're coming up to the last few minutes, and you and we're going to have to expand this conversation.
Sure.
We are going to have to expand this conversation because, as you know, people watching, there's the American Gulag Chronicles book. I urge everyone to go on AmericanGulagChronicles.com and buy that book, which is to raise money to support the Jan 6 prisoners. Now, all of that subject in regard to how the Fedsurrection, which has came about, and all the stuff that's come out of that, and how the CIA, the FBI have been weaponized, the history of the CIA through the Dulles, and let's change a few governments around the world. That is a long conversation, which I would love to have with you, David. Where can people find you? Which is the most important thing.
I always like to mention this because I've already been censored on YouTube. Military veteran, talk about freedom, censored. So I've been censored on YouTube. There's some videos of me with other interviews, but my channel censored. So the best place to find me, just my name, David Baumblatt, Rumble or Twitter. Go on there and you'll find links to my book. I've got a book. It's notice I'm dyslexic. I made sure I did an audio book. I was actually thinking it's got to be an audio book.
Brilliant. Good for you.
Yeah, I was literally thinking that because I don't read. I can't read. I got to do audio or video. So audiobook, ebook, that, and the links are on there. But Rumble and Twitter, just put in David Baumblatt and you should be able to find me.
What's the book called, David? What's your book called?
So it's called Patriots Betrayed, a Soldier, Scholar, Spy's Warning about America's Leadership Crisis.
Right. David, I want us to keep doing this because I mean, this year is crucial. As we were just saying before we came on, there's about 50 governments, 50 countries having elections this year.
And it's going to get worse.
It's going to get absolutely.
I am not saying this to do hype. I predicted this. It's going to get worse. Get ready.
No, and to look at the ramifications of that, and especially with the presidential election, as we're gearing up for that cycle, we will have an election in the UK, and then of course the EU's behaviour what is happening on the Texas border and all the rest. David, I cannot thank you enough for giving me the privilege of being and how to have this conversation with you, and a conversation that, as I say again and again, I want us to have again. There's so much to talk about, because the fact is that you, like other people I know personally, what is happening and the weaponization in America has absolutely affected your life and is affecting other people's lives. And just as a comment, you know, when Alexander Solzhenitsyn was put in the Gulag and then writes Gulag Archipelago, came over to America to warn America of what was coming. And I think the 45 points of communism were put into the congressional record in 1963, I believe they were put in there. David, I'm really sorry, we've got to go, but I am so blessed to be able to talk to you many thousands of miles away in a very, very interesting part of the world which you live in. And I want to hear about that, and I want to hear about your experience in China. So thank you. If you've liked this, please share it. Please go and visit David's channel, engage in his videos, because you will find them absolutely fascinating. I want to discuss in the future very soon his program, his film about feminism. That will soon get one or two people riled, but I tell you what, it's a very important subject to us men who are fully awake to what's going on. So thank you very much, my friend. And I'm just going to play us out. Stay there on the other side, and we'll to catch up. But thank you very much indeed, everyone, for joining us. Bless.